You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Warlord Scarr, the Enraged.
I'm Dave.
I'm Owen.
And I'm still Savage.
And this week, dear listeners, it's time. It's time for me to defeat my great nemesis these many years and smote their ruin upon the rocks below. I talk, of course, of the hated OSR, which I have never been a fan of, and I'm definitely not setting up a campaign of right now. It is clearly, I wish only ruin and the weeping of all OSR fans, and would never religiously read all of their blogs for years at an end. But yes, I've been insulted, and I need to destroy something.
I'm pretty sure the OSR has been declared dead repeatedly at this point.
There has been a few blog posts on that, like, but still, I see this sentiments and bad takes being propagated through the noble lands of the internet. I must not only crush my enemy, I must destroy their wishes and their pithy commentary.
Time for us to add one more to the pile, huh?
I would like to attack their most hated element of this, something which has rankled me since I first saw it, probably 4 or 5 years ago at this point. It is a single phrase, and it gets my gander up every time. It is the phrase, "The answer is not on your character sheet." Ooh. So, okay. I like to put out some scenarios to people. Savage. You are an OSR bandito.
Okay.
Seven's all your stats, 2 hit points, and you have to get past this barricade full of orcs or whatever to get to, a couple of cock pieces. Standard OSR stuff. What tools are you going to be using to get through this conundrum, do you think?
Oh, well, okay. I'm a PC, right? But
yeah,
$7. Okay, fair enough. Below average of everything. Right. Well, orcs barricade. I'm gonna have to look in my backpack. That's on my character sheet.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
It is.
Your equipment list is part of your character sheet, and all of the OSR problem songs saying that it says that you should be using your equipment in weird and wonderful ways to come up with plans.
Let me
but
see.
that's on your character
sheet. I'm going to use the 10-foot pole from my equipment list to reach past the barricade and knock that jug of oil or really strong orc hooch into their campfire. That should cause enough of a distraction for me to get by. So I've used something in my character sheet, and I've used what's around me in the world to solve the problem. Now, with 7 intelligence, I probably won't make the insight roll to realise that I'm much more likely to knock an orc on the ear and alert them all and then die. But that's neither here nor there.
And Owen, after you get these couple of cock pieces, where do you think you're going to make note of, how are you going to record that you've gained this great bounty, do you think?
It depends how much they've got me in the RPG bling line. I suppose I could pull out my pouch of actual metal coins and start counting them out. But other than that, it's going to be on the character sheet. It's interesting for me because there's a big debate about this in teaching a few years ago. And the side that were being jerks about it pretty definitively lost. And the question was, it's not on the ceiling, right? It's when you ask a student a question and the student looks away. There are plenty of really good reasons why a student might look away. They might be trying to access their memory. They might be trying to think of a lie. They might be trying to just uncomfortable with extended eye contact. And we've done a bunch of stuff in teaching which is about trying to basically bring people into the classroom and make them feel like they're a part, and it's a safe space to say stuff that's wrong. And your immediate response of, it's not, if you ask student a question, student breaks eye contact and looks up, you do not say the answer's not in the ceiling. That's just being a jerk. So that's my initial reaction is something like that is, I would not be too happy if a GM said answer's not in your character sheet to me. I would not be too happy at all.
If you're taking that sentence literally,
Yeah.
why do you have a character sheet?
Yeah.
What is the point? Why haven't you just used it for, I don't know, doodle paper? I mean,
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, well, here's the thing: adding doodles, for artistic merit, like that's another thing. But you see, I've heard a few different versions of the statement, and the one I actually like is called "the answer is not necessarily on your character sheet," which puts a very different spin on it.
Yeah. It is. Don't be limited by your character sheet. Is the current nice way to put it in the Principia Apocrypha, which is the attempt to Biblize the OSR principles. We'll probably have a future episode about that.
Wait, what's going on? Sounds awfully like holy texts.
There was an attempt.
Big fan of those. They fetch a lot of money in the open market. Otherwise, don't read them. Nice thin pages if you're stuck in the wilderness. Was there a third example that you wanted to run us through?
I just want to say, Dave, now that you've gotten the 13 copper pieces and but also a cunningly a well-crafted letter written to the orcs by Count Dracon, three hexes over, where you're going to where you're going to make note of this vital information which will inform your future plans.
Oh, it's going straight into the character sheet.
The notes section of the character sheet. The point of those facetious arguments, I guess, was to make the note of OSR style play puts this huge emphasis on using all available tools of making to use treasure as a means not only for progression but for essentially character power by non-mechanical means, by in-universe social means, and also taking remembering important parts of the world to use as ammunition instead of just brute forcing a thing. So all these things are important, but they're also the kind of things that if you have a normal character sheet, like we would have in a modern game, you would have sections for all these things on your character sheet. Or if you're the type of person who writes all their stats in an index card, you would probably have a couple of extra index cards in there with your notes, your equipment, your blackmail on Count Dracon, and so forth. So when you put those two things beside each other, you see the crack starting to form in this phraseology is that the OSR playstyle is clearly not opposed to people writing important things down. So the problem is not the sheet. The problem is the part of the sheet that where we haven't mentioned yet, which is all of the stats and in a modern game, skills and things, the numerical elements that people like to refer to, but OSR things are seem opposed to. Now, I have, of course, my own take on what the reason for rejecting stats would be. But given how insistent people are that you should roll 3d6 down the line for your 6 stats, do anyone else have thoughts on the oddity of that incongruity, as it were?
let's see, how much gas can I throw in this fire? I wonder, are you simply misrepresenting their position by taking the literal statement and, it's a bit of a straw man, even clearly on its face.
That is sort of my... Like, I have my... What are they really saying thing. It's just like...
Yeah. We're working towards being reasonable, but let's stop on all the attractions along the way. Of course, clearly, the problem isn't with the character sheet, it's with players. The players are wrong. It's not the character sheet fault that it does or doesn't hold the answers. It's players who get in a mindset that everything is going to be solved by the numbers I've crafted and honed. Is there a lot of min-maxing in the OSR, or is it generally systems are too simple to allow for, or too crude? It's just a general question, because you do run into those sorts of players, and I think 3.5 is kind of where it really had its heyday, for whom every situation is a question about interrogating the character sheet for the right skill bonus or the right buff or spell prepared to solve the problem, rather than sort of casting around for a novel sort of Jackie Chan / Buster Keaton solution in the world in that moment. It's on my character sheet. I brought it. That's all I've got access to. I'm never going to sort of take the cues about how the place is absolutely stuffed with dynamite, or everybody here seems really bribable. Is that would that be fair to say that there's a style of player, a sort of breed for whom it's all the numbers game? Do min-maxing players exist in the OSR? Is that a fair charge to level at them, that they're seeking the answers to the character sheet because that's what they've sort of honed in on, the numbers on the sheet, or am I being as wildly misrepresented as the dear warlord?
Well, here's the thing, like, there's a massive effort in the OSR classic rule set to randomize all your stats and also all your gains as you gain XP. Your hit points get randomized. You're doing your classic 3d6 down the line, and unless you're getting into the proper first edition AD&D clones, you're not going to have many fancy abilities like a paladin or ranger would have in the classic. You would just have fighters would just be getting hit bonuses, and wizards would be getting spells, and thieves would be getting +5 to each of their incredibly low percentages to succeed in anything.
So it's the opposite. In fact, it's like the attempt by the system and the people who are running these systems to negate character specialization or
but there's
or
the
even
thing,
expertise.
there is all that, but there's also the massive emphasis on getting equipment, but both the probably random equipment that you get from going into a dungeon and losing half the characters, and one of you comes out with like a rope that climbs on its own while you whistle, or a makeup plush that turns you invisible to gorgons or something.
Okay.
There's all that stuff, but also there's because they have XP for loot is such a common thing. There's a natural incentive for characters to end up with thousands of gold worth of stuff that they can't invest like you would in 3.5, where you just buy +3 flaming longswords until the cows come home. So in that case, players are encouraged to essentially specialize their characters through the equipment list, which is part of the character sheet, and say buy I hire 12 hirelings to walk in front of us, or 50 war dogs to send into the goblin camp, or flaming oil,
right,
10-foot poles.
Just watching the party dashboard, and the anger meters are topping out. Who wants to take the first wild rage-filled swing?
Well, if you're going to be such a hodgepodge of random crap on your character, you're going to have to refer to your character sheet. You're going to be
Very true, yeah.
Hang on, do I have a Rod of Wonder anymore? I do. Also, I've got, D3 feather tokens that turn into large bees when I toss them. And I also have 3,000 pounds of lead. So, I wonder how I'm carrying that. Alright. Well, yeah, I guess I'll see what I can do. If it's a random mishmash of crap like a Monkey Island game, you're probably going to try use Exxon Man until something works, you know. You're going to look through your character sheet. I mean, if you want that literary thing, you're it should be just about in the moment of play. Grand. Then don't give out random loot, because then people will be trying. Okay, let's see if we can figure something out about what I can do. You've got to structure it so that if you want people to be all no, I just want you to improv. Just tell them that at the start. But yeah, like if you go around going, okay, you get random stuff, so you never know what's handy. You're gonna have to make note of that character sheet, and then when you go through the situation, unless you've perfectly memorized your character sheet, you're going to go take a look at your character sheet. When someone goes, let me check my character sheet. That's because there's a problem, and I'm going to check my bag of crap to see if I have a solution.
Dave?
Yeah, the idea that you could simply ignore the character sheet entirely is like, it's plainly silly. Like, given how the objections we've already put up to it, which leads to why the sentence exists in the first place. Like, at best, it's a poorly worded way of encouraging players to think outside the box. But there are better ways of phrasing it. But it seems very well prescriptive.
Yeah. I think at this point we should probably get down to brass tacks and say, well, at least I'm pretty sure I know what the actual thing, the thing they're actually saying, but doesn't sound as cool when they sing it. And it's, I think, please look at the world, not the character sheet. Like, please look at the cool puzzle I made. Please look at the cool NPCs I have that you can negotiate with. You don't just have to stab them. You can negotiate with the goblins. You can negotiate with the kobolds. You can trick the kobolds and the goblins into fighting each other, and you don't have to fight them. Please engage with the fiction. But that doesn't sound as self-confident as, don't look at your character sheet. It comes across to me as trying to put on airs when what you're actually saying is we rather than focus on mechanical solutions to things, please engage with the scenario in front of you. And this is where having your big in-depth skill system can cripple a lot of let's say creative play OSR heads, is that they want people to engage the traps, mess with the trap, see if you can recycle the trap for cool parts, talk with the monsters, don't just try to figure out how you can kill them. Stop using intelligence checks and charisma checks to bypass things. And when you realize that the big confident principle is actually more like a request, it makes an awful lot more sense, at least to me. It's trying to say the juice of the game for me is people engaging with the world and working with what's there. And if people find it too efficient or more interesting, is the other issue, to just use the mechanics to bypass everything with a minimum of worry, then the juice is gone for a lot of these DMs, and they feel unsatisfied. It's like, what was the point of making this 200 room mega dungeon if we're just going to speed run through it?
There's no point. Don't do it. It's a terrible idea. So the GM who feels frustrated enough to say something like, the answer's not in your character sheet, I think the rebuttal to that from players is, and I'm not standing inside your head, so what's obvious to you is not obvious to me. Highlight the levers, highlight the opportunities. make it, either put it on the table or lay out some cue cards or have props around that highlight the things that you think will solve this problem that we can engage with creatively. It's, until we have fully immersive simulcast, braindance / VR stuff where everybody's seeing it from the DM's perspective, then it is fair for players to, when faced with an incomplete picture, or maybe they just weren't paying attention from the description, or it does not occur to them that this or that thing is useful. Until we have that, I think it's legit for them to look at the character sheet and go, is there any way I can use the game systems to prompt the GM to give me a clue without them having to be explicit about what the answer is, or without me having to go, I don't know what to do, please tell me.
Yeah, like I'd like to come back to the point that Owen brought up earlier on. Is just like, not all people think and process information the same way. Like, not everyone is going to, you read off your expertly written box text from your Kickstarter OSR adventure. That might not jog people's realizations. Like, if you're talking about this locked door, they may not be imagining a locked door. You like there might be 5 different ways to fit a wire through the obvious gaps in the rotting wood that you thought were obvious, but they think doors are solid. So, like, until you show them a picture of the type of door it is, they're not going to realize, we could just kick this down or put a wire through the gap or something. Like,
on a side
not
note,
everyone.
Isn't it kind of wild how sort of universally players tune out when it comes to box text? As soon as they realize the GM is reading from, prepared material, like 50% of players I know will actively dismiss, and they're the kind of people who click past the dialogue in games as well. Like, get me to the objective, show me the thing to solve, show me the hit point bag to hit. Well, maybe just fucking listen to what you're being told, and then the answer will become obvious. Because whoever wrote the text, unless it's just pure waffle, whoever wrote the text is setting the scene, and your GM is dutifully reading it out. Bloody well listen. The answer may not be on the character sheet. It might well be in the box text.
Do you know they had to restructure how you write box text?
Oh yeah.
Because if the first thing you say is there's a dragon there, someone interrupts you with "I shoot him," and then you're like, okay, so you hadn't listened to all the other stuff that's there, so I have to mention the dragon last. I have to mention the guy with an axe last, because if I mention him first, that's all you care about.
It's the initial info bias, isn't it? It's like, I know a thing, and that's the only thing I'm going to focus on.
Yeah,
all that other stuff is just details.
I'm done listening to you, talky man.
Yeah. So yeah,
well, there
I
is
run up
sort
and
of
down with the thing. You plunge into a pool of acid. What the hell? Hostile GMing.
Yeah. There is a move away from box text in some OSR circles, which again, the OSR is not a united front. There's different styles and everything. But there is a move more towards bullet points and other GM facing. These are the GM's prompts. The answer might not be in the module. But
well, it better be somewhere.
Buying it.
It better be somewhere, because if it isn't in the character sheet, it isn't in the descriptions, it isn't in, the writers didn't bother to put it in there, then, okay, fair, there's something to be said for set the problem, not the solution, but, why am I paying for this stuff if you're not going to give me anything to work with?
Well, there's going to be varieties in quality and all your stuff, but
True.
Part of the issue is going to be the expectation of GM to sort of extemporaneously come up with relevant details the more the players interrogate the fiction.
You mean do the writer's job further? Got it.
It's always going to be a fickle dance, isn't it? Writers can't anticipate everything, GMs can't be expected to prepare everything, and players can't be expected to recall everything. What fundamentally flawed creatures we are.
There is, it's certainly problems on all fronts, but ultimately saying that there's going to be some compromises somewhere. That's okay, but it is important to be aware of where they're likely to be. And in this case, we have a section where, say you're trying to do your classic, there's a secret door thing, And an OSR game would say, if they pull up the carpet, they can see the scratch marks on the stone, and they won't need to to spend 10 minutes dungeon searching for a 1 in 3 chance of finding it.
Okay.
But not everyone is going to realize that the carpet can be pulled up, because carpets in modern houses tend not to be the kind of thing you can just pull up on a whim, and thus people are not used to medieval carpet, and that's something where a GM could very easily forget to mention the thing, or the fact they call it a carpet and rather than a rug. That single mistake could make it impossible for them to even think of the actual solution, and therefore they would have to rely on the dice roll, and the elf smells the grooves on the floor through the carpet, and that is how you detect the
groove smelling's a dwarven trait. Just back off, buddy. Yeah. Okay. So what are we saying here? I feel like Tomb of Horrors is a bunch of these instances where it's your phrasing, Mick. Come on, let's get this right. You're saying this is more like an escape room where you should be sort of, as you say, interrogating the entire layout. And if you're in the habit of doing that, then more often than not, you are going to come across these secrets, which kind of makes the whole thing a bit redundant. Also, you look like a mental person if every room you ever enter, you start pulling on, the corners of bookcases and twiddling lamps and things to see what happens. You will not be asked back to that dungeon. Whereas the other extreme is, I'll see if I can get, I've got good insight, or I've got good perception. I'll see if I can just shoehorn or use that as a kind of mechanical crowbar to get the GM to pop the solution out so that we can move on.
I actually want to go back to the Tomb of Horrors example, because there's a very interesting example here. Like, one of the big things is, like, after you get through the initial set of 10-foot spike pit traps and the first couple of doors that disintegrate you or strip you naked, there's a major room that has, like, the life and works of the great Lich Asarak all across, and to all intents and purposes it looks like a dead end. And to get further into the dungeon, you have to break down the stucco wall. And how I was absolutely unable to figure out how anyone was supposed to understand that, because I didn't know what stucco was. In Europe, we call it plaster. Now, if you were telling me, the walls are covered in cheap plaster, that would quite possibly be enough of a clue to say, maybe there's just something going to punch a hole through it and see what's on the other side. That's the solution. But if you call it stucco, which is a very American word, not everyone's going to know, what's stucco? Is that some kind of weird concrete? Is it indestructible cement? Or is it just the style of the frescoes on the walls? Like, these kinds of one-word errors can sabotage a description and completely obscure the obvious solution. And that's the kind of thing where
clearly it's too highbrow a game for you uncomplicated European minds. Also, back in the day, apparently property... So, modern player groups, fine with burglary, probably not so much property damage. But back in the day, it's like, well, I'm here to kill his minions, to steal his stuff. Might as well kick in all the doors as well. But if you put a foot through the plasterwork, aha, a secret passage. Well, there you go. So, I mean, perhaps that's one of the things that sort of appears in the OSR checklist. You are expected to prod and poke everything to see if it breaks or changes or clicks. And if that's the mindset you're entering into an OSR sort of game with, then this stuff's going to pop out pretty naturally. Everyone's going to have a good time, and the hotel bill is going to be pretty astronomical as TVs go out the window.
Like, what the ultimate intent behind this, pithy comment versus pleading argument is to get people into the mindset of asking questions, of interrogating the fiction, whatever NPCs or dungeon traps or whatever, asking questions, and that the GM will have the answers. They'll have their rulings, not rules, or whatever. But like, that's a more complicated process than simply banning people from using the stats that you made them roll, that say that they, should barely be able to walk. That's the type of things. Is like, if you want to say that you want to get a person into a particular mindset to play your game, then say that. Be explicit.
Well,
coming up with cool, pithy commentary.
It has OSR on it, and that's kind of, if you approach this with the mindset that OSR, and I think interrogate's a great word here. OSR games, you're going to be interrogating the game world, and that's a pretty rough process, by the way. Interrogations are never too sweet, because the game world is going to be rough right back at you. Like, that's the expectation. Elfie 2, Elfie 3, character sheets are already written up. You're expecting to go through these things in a sort of disposable manner, and inherit all the previous guy's stuff. So yeah, you're going in there with the mindset that we are going to start tearing, the fixtures off the walls to see what happens, because that's the kind of game I'm in now. If that's
the doors.
Yeah,
it like ultimately, isn't this comes down to, I have a preferred style of game in mind, and I'm going to passively aggressively snipe at you until you start playing the way I envision you playing in my head.
Yeah, not if people are going into it with the right mindset. If
but
they know,
but that's it. Like, this is the pre-game discussion again.
Yeah, oh boy.
Because rather than just say, I expect you to creatively solve all your problems in this one, the answers are interactable within the game world, and I've deliberately set it up so that you can find solutions by poking around. So it's more about interacting with the game world than interacting with the mechanics. That's a constructive thing to say to people.
Absolutely.
The answer's not on your character sheet is being a jerk.
Yeah, 100%.
It's basically going, I want you to do, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, once you've had to utter that phrase, you've clearly missed a whole bunch of things you should have said to your players at the get-go.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
It's being the coach telling your players, play better, you cowards. Or, the writer going, couldn't you make this story better? That isn't good feedback. That isn't even helpful. It's like, do better. It's like, Mattingly, trim those sideburns. I mean, it's not a helpful comment. That's my fundamental problem with it. It's not helpful. Yeah, it's completely the wrong way to put it. It's like this. I'm going to give you a real Twitter zing here. Well, that's brilliant. It's achieved nothing and it's annoyed me. Congratulations, you're an amazing GM.
God,
Yep.
Yeah.
Despite all my attempts to sow dissent, I think we're largely in agreement on this one, aren't we? That it's a as you said, this perfectly useless comment, which has missed a whole bunch of stuff beforehand. It's not that it's a bad way of playing games. The OSR can be a lot of fun, but if you find yourself as an OSR GM having to say things like that, then clearly you haven't communicated what's going on to your players, and that should have happened pre-game. That's
the adult conversation. Communicate clearly.
But it's also the framing matters for how you give feedback, right? If you're effectively basically critiquing somebody's play. Now, would you like it if I frankly critiqued your GMing? Because I've got a bunch of notes here that I've made that I could really unload on you if I wanted to. Do you want the full, basically, panopticon of my insight to slam down on you like the Eye of Sauron and point out all of your inadequacies as a GM? I could do that if you'd like. I don't generally, out of, we're all sinners in the garden of the world, and I didn't want to make your life much harder. But if you're going to be, firing bombs at me, I might decide to chuck a few back. We don't want that. Everyone's got foibles and weaknesses and areas in their game they often probably aren't aware are terrible weaknesses, right? You'll only get it through honest feedback, and that feedback has to be delivered gently. and allow the person to come to their own thing. Because you can destroy someone with a few well-chosen barbs. You really can.
What does it say? 2 positives, 1 negative?
Yeah, basically. The compliment sandwich, you know?
Yeah.
You know, good feedback, little bit of thing, little slightly critical one thing, and the GM will then obsess completely over that slightly critical comment for weeks afterwards. And because it's difficult creating things, right? But as a player, you're also creating your character and creating your engagement with the world, and someone basically crapping on what you're trying to do is just going to annoy you. It's like, I can't think of what to do in this situation. I'm going to check my character sheet and see if inspiration strikes. The answer is not on your character sheet. Well,
It's nowhere
I'm
else in
sorry
evidence.
for trying. I'm sorry for caring. I'm sorry for listening to your description and then trying to come up with an idea with the tools I have. This is a pre-game discussion. I want the game to be focused on interaction with the mechanics of the world, and you'll find the stuff that way. Like, if I told my players going into Mass and Nyarlathotep, just play however you want, grand, okay? But instead I'd say, okay guys, there's literally blizzards of NPCs and lists you're going to have. I would make it a focus early on to keep track of everything. So the 4 sessions in, you don't realise that we've just met at our 60th NPC. We need to start taking notes. You tell them in advance so the players can succeed at the style of game you're running.
Yeah.
Like, it's just get them ready for what will happen. That's all.
Yeah. And of course, you have to think about your delivery. Like, you want to be encouraging people to ask questions, to poke things. I would severely not take the Tomb of Horrors as a great example of how to lay out your instant death trap dungeon, because that was deliberately designed for advanced players who'd survived all of Gary Gygax's nonsense for years at his first campaign. It is not your...
No. The Tomb of Horrors is an elaborate GM revenge trap. This is Gary Gygax trying to put together something that is deliberately unfair to get these jerks who have messed with him so much. There's a bunch of stuff in there that is frankly unfair, deliberately unfair.
It's pretty wild.
Like the sleep gas, which is like you all fall unconscious and then the roller slowly squishes you to death. It's like, is there any save here? No. You just fall unconscious.
Yeah, that's petty stuff, like, from the sounds of it.
Yeah, but the thing is, you should be setting up your OSR game to encourage people engaging with the fiction. You should be encouraging people to ask questions. You can't have traps that go off if you look at them too closely. You can't have NPCs that attack on sight unless there's a clear in-world reason. You should be rolling those reaction tables and having people run away if they're 15 adventurers burst in the door. You should be setting things up in a way where engaging with the world is profitable and gets them what they want. And also, if someone does check their character sheet for, say, how many flasks of oil or try to figure out, well, my character has randomly rolled up woodworking as their random peasant background, would that possibly tell me something as wood? Don't shut that down. Use it as a way to get to the interactive problem solving element. And the stats are there for a reason. Like the reasons might be esoteric and known only to Gary Gygax, but they're there, and it's not wrong to, if nothing else comes out of it, setting up. Yeah, you can make a risky check, roll under your stat on a d20, but if you fail, that would be a wandering monster check or something. That's not, evil. It's not against. You're not going to get your OSR license taken away if you use the occasional stat check. Just make clear to the players that that's not what the game is about. It's if they're doing something risky to get additional answers, that's what you want an OSR player to be doing. You want them to be carefully planning and then taking stupid risks. That's where the fun of the game is, according to so many of these GMs.
All right, let's put a cap on it. The answer's not in your character sheet. Bad phrase, but with some truths behind it.
Yep.
Okay, so the answer, it turns out...
It's on this podcast!
Well, it's certainly... I think it's in the label OSR. And you can assume that people know what that means. But if you do that, you're going to end up very likely having to say something like the answer's on your character sheet. Because OSR brings its own implicit assumptions that not everybody might be clued in on. Because, D&D's the same everywhere, right? So just make sure if you are running an OSR style game or running a game that has this sort of mindset that you clue everyone in beforehand. Don't expect, especially younger players, don't expect them to have a handle on just how fair life in the dungeon can be.
And of course, it'll be a while before they get to any high level and can actually stab some goblins. So, remember to make that clear. Set expectations. Talk to your players.
You can't stab goblins at the start of the OSR?
I mean, how many goblins?
I don't. Is it D3 goblins? Is D3 goblins a good fight?
Look, anything looks even like it's getting a sniff of 7th level, I'm restarting the campaign over. Right, okay, that's it, folks. If you're OSR aficionados, if you've suffered through one of these episodes where the answer evidently wasn't on your character sheet because you hadn't written it down, if you're a GM who is at pains to elaborate on what the possibilities in the world are, do join us on our Discord. Let us know about your brush with situations like this. We'd love to hear from you and have you join the Adventuring Party community. I've been SavageMick.
Dave.
I've been Owen.
And I have been Warlord Scarr, and my axe is sated for now. But I suspect I will take another swing at the dying corpse of the OSR at a later date.
Breathing fresh life into it, no doubt. Okay, and on that note, this party's over. Thank you for listening to the Adventuring Party. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can head on over to SpeakPipe and drop us a line. Or you can join us on our Discord server, where we keep the party going after hours. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, or Twitter, or you can email the hosts at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license, but you probably knew that already. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and look forward to seeing you back here next week. Goodbye.